The Toronto Comic Arts Festival would like to honor and acknowledge the original caretakers of this land, the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. We are in a territory that was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon One Pump Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, Haudenosaunee, and allied nations to share and care for the land. This land is also covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This acknowledgement is a reminder that we are all treaty people and that we have a responsibility to the land and each other. TCAF celebrates the long history of sharing stories on this land and is committed to increasing Indigenous voices and perspectives in our programming.
Welcome, everyone, to the TCAF 2024 virtual program. We're privileged to present No Toner, Toronto edition, an overview of the early days of zines with some creators from the late 1980s. This will be an insightful discussion featuring our esteemed guests, Gary Roscoe Johnson, Barbra Fisch, and our moderator, Hal Kelly, and I'll be joining the panel as well. Mark your calendars for May 11th and 12th as the TCAF Festival unfolds. Additionally, our digital marketplace commences on May 3rd and concludes on May 24th. Explore the exciting lineup of creators and events on our official website, TorontoComics.com, and stay informed with timely updates on our Instagram handle at TorontoComics. Missed any part of the action? Fear not, as all our digital programs are available for retrospective viewing on our YouTube channel, Toronto Comics, and immerse yourself in the wonderful digital programs to come. So welcome to TCAF 2024. Let's begin. Firstly, I have to send out special thanks to our programming sponsor, Seneca College School of Creative Arts and Animation, and special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Toronto Public Library. And TCAF would also not be possible without the support from the Canada Council of the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, Toronto Arts Council, and the Government of Ontario. And I will hand over hosting duties to Hal Kelly.
Okay, well, thanks, Fiona, and thanks everybody for coming today. I'd like to start by having everybody go around, introduce themselves, mention their zine name and the approximate years it was active. I know it was a while ago. Fiona, I know you did Social Drinker, plus you contributed to a lot of people's zines too over the years. So what was your inspiration for that?
I don't have like a singular title that would have been an ongoing thing. Many of them were just standalone zines. And yeah, I contributed to other people's zines. And the inspiration was, well, maybe firstly was Chester Brown's Yummy Fur. Seeing his self-published comic, I found it at Dragon Lady on Queen Street in 1985. And that opened my eyes to alternative comics, underground comics, and to self-publishing. And that was when I was in art school at OCAD, when it was OCA, before it was a university. And when I was leaving school and starting to have art shows, and I was beginning to have those even before I graduated, I would sell zines at the shows. There were these accessible objects that were could travel the world in a way that the paintings on the wall couldn't. So I would always have this paper ephemera thing available. So that was the inspiration, definitely Chester Brown, but then the motivation was to get my work out into the world.
Okay, Gary, I know you did a bunch of zines. Do you want to talk about your zine names and approximate years? And what was your gateway drug for doing zines?
I had friends back in the Detroit area who did a music fanzine And I'd been in a school newspaper from elementary school, junior high to high school. So I had journalism in my blood. And getting a job at Kinko's copies on Bloor Street just further inflamed the problem because I could get an employee discount and fool around with all kinds of cool stuff. But the main zine that I did was F.O.D. magazine. Every issue it would change to a different, like Fear of Death, or was the first one. It was Fear of Driving was the last one. F.O.D. was just Fuck Off and Die for the first issue, I think. It was supposed to be an extreme metal zine, although it grew into something different. Fiona contributed to it. Who else was in there? GB Jones, astoundingly, gave me some artwork for it. Lots of other contributors. I contributed to Glenn's Goop magazine, Jughead. Yeah, did a centerfold for that. I helped Catherine Kaiser, who I worked with at Kinko's, as well as Gloria for a while, print Vagina Dentata and something called Perversion. They're kind of lesbian or gender bent kind of zines, and Tat Mag.
And Tat Mag what was her name? Anna? I remember her first name.
Yeah. And I've held masters for many of JD's Fist in Your Face and other Gary Monster zine, and in my hands because they brought them to me to print. So
right. So you printed a lot of people's zines besides your own.
Yeah, it was fun. Kinko's was like an interesting, like, creative hub where everybody and the musicians and the comic artists, like, Seth and Joe and those guys would come and do mock-ups, paste-ups and stuff. And I once held the script for David Cronenberg's Naked Lunch in my hands, and as I'm leafing through it, I found that it had William Burroughs' personal notes in the margins.
Sweet.
Wow, that's great. What was I going to say? So, what was this? The Kinko's on Bloor? This was the one.
Kinko's on Bloor. It started in a smaller location. They moved across the street.
That was pretty big, as I recall. And the management there, did they know what you were up to?
They were kind of they were semi-hipsters. Tom was a musician on the side, and they brought in other people who were mostly from the music world and whatnot. But I have no idea. Like, I printed hundreds and hundreds of illegitimate copies and got away with it. So I don't know if they allowed me to, or because they were sympathetic towards small press, or if I was actually getting away with something. But if they're watching this, my apologies. I hope I didn't get anybody in trouble.
So is that your Kinko's badge that you're wearing right now?
Here, yeah, let's see if I can get it up closer to you. One of the things about being a hoarder is you hang on to stuff like this.
And you were what, a Duo Tech consultant?
A Docu-Tech consultant. Yeah, Docu-Tech was the latest, the Xerox's, they sent me down to Xerox headquarters in Canada to take a class on this thing. It was a pretty remarkable, it was basically a high-end scanner for the time attached to a photocopier, and it's hooked up to binders and everything. So you could do all kinds of crazy stuff that you would do in Photoshop now, except on the screen of this thing, and it would spit a fully bound product out the other end. It was pretty cool.
Okay, so Barbara, I like that. So what was your zine name, and what was your gateway drug for getting you to it?
My zine was called Salmon Hut. And so it was kind of a conceptual zine. We would change the name slightly with each, similar to F.O.D., we would change the name slightly with each issue. So it started out Salmon Hut. The next one was Salmon Nut, then Salmon Gut, then Salmon Smut. And then the penultimate issue was a double issue. So one side was Salmon with a Y Hut, the other was Salmon with an E, so Salmon. And it was so once you flipped it, so one side, so they were both the front cover. One was upside down, one half of it was upside down, depending on which way you were reading it. But my gateway was, I think, around 1986 or 87. I had my first trip to New York, and I'm blanking on the name of the store, but I think it was on East.
Here.
Was it See Here?
See Here, thank you. I still have the bag.
That's the
So I
one you
went
went
to-
downstairs when you was there when you went downstairs, those narrow steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was completely enamored. That was actually where I bought my first JDs. It was JDs number 3, but I bought it at See Here, and I bought a whole bunch of other zines. And there was some amazing art. Like I remember Jeff Gaither. I was completely obsessed with his art, kind of like a skate artist. I came back to Toronto with this giant bag of zines, and I was like, that's it. Like we're doing a zine. And I was still in high school, and I had run to be the editor of the school poetry literary magazine Glass Shadows, and I got voted out. I didn't get. I was absolutely furious that I didn't get the editor. Some guy like in the grade below me got voted in. He brought a bunch of his friends in, and they all voted for him. And I was like, to hell with it. I'm starting a zine, but you needed I was like, I'm using school resources. You had to have a staff sponsor. So I went to my English teacher, who was so cool, Fran Blevis. If you're out there, Ms. Blevis, we love you. We still love you. And the ESL teacher, Mr. Lamb, we love you. So they were our staff sponsors, and we would just stay after school until like 6 o'clock or whatever, doing collages. They let us use one of the staff photocopiers. So we used so much school resources, so much of their toner, so much paper, and we decided that the legal size gave us the most bang for our buck, like per sheet, because you could fold it in kind of like the same size as JD's. You could get almost a full size of, and it's a much more appealing shape. You know, it looks more like a piece of music, almost like a 7-inch single. Almost, it's just sexier. So that was the beginning of it. We just decided we're going to be a collective. So there's no editor, where everybody's the editor. Nobody gets credit for anything. Like it was all like collages and lots of really surreal writing and lots of cut ups, because I was obsessed with Burroughs. And but there was no authors anywhere. On the inside front cover, everybody would just be listed. And it was like, and because we would also often collaborate on pages. So that was the whole concept, like no bosses, no gods, no masters, and just like no rules. It was kind of like an anarchist utopia of surrealism. And a lot of really kind of very perverse things that, if the teachers knew we were doing on school property, would not have been permitted. And also it launched we had a United Way campaign in our high school every year, and so different homerooms would have a United Way fundraising campaign, and we would go on, we would do these kind of like Dadaist announcements on the school speaker every day. And one of the homerooms made these anti-salmon squad buttons, and they sold out. They used our zine to make their own kind of propaganda, but it was so meta. It was hilarious. But yeah, we were just high school hooligans, really.
Okay, that sounds good. So Salmon Hut grew out of your revenge for petty high school politics.
Yes, and then I started submitting it. I started trading like internationally, and we got what was that zine that was actually like a huge catalog review of zines?
Backsheet 5?
Backsheet 5. We got such an amazing review from Backsheet 5. The guy was like, I don't understand what's going on here, but it's genius. There's something brilliant happening.
Well, that's great. So what years approximately?
Approximately 1987, 80, maybe 1986, '86 to '88 primarily, but then we reissued a bunch of stuff. So technically to 1992, 1988 to 92,
Yeah.
87 to 92.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Barbara mentioned trading. Like, how did most people here distribute your zines? Did you sell them, trading? What was the primary?
It was mostly trading. It was
Yeah.
almost exclusively trading.
Gary, was that your experience?
Trading for sure. Remember back then, international mail was not expensive like it is now. It was reasonable, and so you could do a lot of, man, it's just trading for sure. But consignment work with man, we had them at Tower Records, See Here, and all kinds of other just consignment deals where you mail them off to these distributors. I think maybe Blacklist Mail Order even had some. But yeah, it was all through the postal service, but locally as well. Glad Day Books. Can you remember any of the Pages, the places?
Yeah.
What was the gay bookstore on the east
Glad
side?
Day?
Yeah, Glad Day. Okay, I
Yeah.
thought that was it. Man,
Yeah.
they had a great selection
No,
of zines.
we were pretty lucky in Toronto that there was a lot of places that carried zines and sold zines. You
Yeah.
mentioned
The
a whole
Island.
bunch.
Yeah. And
Yeah, Big Island,
really,
Suspect
yeah,
Video.
Yeah.
you
Well,
got-
yeah, of course, the Beguiling. Yeah.
And ain't the Rosedale Library?
This ain't the Rosedale
Library.
Library. That's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pages when it was there. Fiona, how about you? What did you do?
I traded a lot, but also sold them, but not for very much, right? Like maybe $2 at shows.
Yeah. You still have some?
Yeah, in my archives buried away.
So do I.
So here's a general question. Does everybody still have all your issues?
I'm
Um,
missing Vagina Dentata and some of the other things, but I've got 50 uncollated copies of the last F.O.D. that I just have been too lazy to put together.
I can't find a whole bunch of mine in my storage. Like they're somewhere in storage. I literally have one copy of the final issue and one copy of the anthology issue, and I can't find any of the others. But Louis Jacob, who was supposed to be on our panel today, I know he has full archives.
Yeah.
But I've gone through my storage and I have no clue what box they're all in.
Right.
I wanted to give a shout out to my sister, Sheila Smyth, who created a zine called Babel. And she's continuing to make work, which you can find her on Facebook and on Instagram. And she lost all of her archives in a terrible fire about 12 years ago. So we're always on the lookout for copies of Babel, if anybody back.
I probably have some.
Yeah.
I've got lots of, I have most of my stuff archived. I just have to figure out what boxes they're all in. I've got a huge storage locker.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that Babel, just like Trash Compactor, featured cartoonists like myself and Maurice Bellicoop and Seth and some other folks. Yeah, it was a great zine.
Yeah. No, I think I'm glad you brought that up, Fiona, because I started Trash Compactor was like initially just movies, trashy movies, but then it grew into more, diverse and a lot of comic art. I was lucky to have you, Seth, Maurice, Peter Dako, and other people contribute.
Yeah. You should do a big shout out to Pete Dako being, Casual Cat
Casual.
zine and how that was kind of at the same time as Raw Magazine and Weirdo.
Yeah, no, he would have been good. I was hoping he was going to join us, but he just didn't feel like, appearing. I can understand that too. But no, Peter did great things. And I mean, as our zines grew, I think what was in them grew. What they were influenced grew, you must have printed, Gary, you must have printed Babels.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think probably a couple hundred more than I was supposed to, but Yep, a couple issues of those.
Yeah. And Sheila being at the Purple Institute, then she probably distributed a lot then,
Yeah.
a lot there. It was a
The
good,
Purple Institute was such an amazing resource for so many aspects of independent and alternative culture. For people who are not familiar with it, that was it was on Gladstone, just north of Queen, and it was kind of a combination gallery, performance space, art center, after hours, and just so many incredible underground artists and musicians kind of congregated there, and it was very free form, very anarchist, and that was a fantastic space. Like that was a Toronto treasure.
yeah.
Somebody should write a book about that experience.
Yeah, and it was run by Sheila Smyth and Paisley, right?
Shirla Burla
And Shirla Burla, of course.
and several other folks.
How can I forget Shirla? Gosh.
A
It
Fly
was
Fly.
Shirla and Paisley mostly, right?
was kind of adjacent, but definitely part of that group. Fly usually
Mhm.
had her
Yeah,
own
Fly was always there before she moved to New York.
Yeah, and again, another amazing zinester who
Of course.
moved to New York and then became enmeshed in squatter culture and being a squatter activist and continues to be and today is like a squatter archivist.
Mhm.
And
She's kind of like a rock star of the squatter scene.
yeah, and
Well, she's also a rock star in her own right.
Squatting is in the news recently too. There have been a lot of squatters' rights issues happening in the United States.
yeah,
Yeah. So there's been, talking about where we used to have zines in places like the Purple Institute. I mean, recently there's been a lot of exhibitions going on in museums, like the Brooklyn Museum just got finished their show. What was it called? Copy Machine Manifesto: Artists Who Make Zines, of which Salmon Hut was included in the Toronto section.
Yeah.
That's been pretty exciting.
Yes, that. I was very, very happy to hear about that. I heard the catalog just came out.
Did I think I sent you a picture from it?
Oh, I think you did. Yes, thank you.
You included. I think that came from Bruce LaBruce's collection. I think there's a little credit underneath for him.
Oh, I thought. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought
Could be
because
wrong.
he was the one who told me it was included.
I know a lot of people. He was the source for a lot of things that were included in there. Did you make it to that show?
No, I'm not allowed in USA. I've got no criminal record in any country in the world, but because I've been denied entry so many times, I've been flagged. So, and I've tried to apply for the waiver 3 times, and they just keep denying me. So I'm like, whatever. If your feeling economy does not want my touristic dollars, there's an entire world out there for me to travel. So, yeah, no, it's USA is no longer on the menu for me.
Oh God, that's a pain. But anyway,
Yeah.
you were there in spirit.
Yes.
But there's always other. MoMA has had exhibitions that included zines. AGO, Jim Shedden did that show recently. I Am Here, which included an opportunity. He had zines out, an opportunity for people to handle them, look through them, which is a great way to do it. Because and it makes total sense. The Brooklyn Museum, they're all behind plastic or glass.
Mhm.
They're just
and
too
you
valuable.
had
Some of them.
can you tell us about the show that you curated?
I-
And just before you share, I just wanted to mention that Fly Zine Archive was bought by the Minneapolis Institute of Art, and there was a show of,
Yeah.
of them. But yeah, they're housed there, which is
Yeah.
a huge.
Well, I did a show before the lockdown. It's probably the last thing a lot of people did. It was called Epic Moments of Personal Failure, Toronto Zines of the 80s and 90s. And I think the great thing about that was we were able to have all the zines out on tables. People were able to handle them, pick them up. I don't think I lost anything from it, and I think that's a good way because it's probably the only way. Although, most big cities, including Toronto, have zine libraries. I'm going to imagine that all of our zines, like Barbara, have you ever been to the Toronto Zine Library?
No, where is it?
It's in the Transact Club.
Oh my
Upstairs.
gosh, how did I not know
A lot of
this?
stuff. They have a lot of stuff there. Wouldn't be surprised. Gary too, Fiona. I'm sure that I'm sure for Fiona, because she contributed to so many zines, there's
Mhm.
stuff. And Gary, you printed so many zines, there's your stuff there too. But yeah, I mean, I've looked through what's there. There's a lot of good stuff.
Wow, I
There's
had
some,
no idea.
I think most universities have started their own zine libraries, and OCAD has a
OCAD has a zine library. The Toronto Reference Library has a zine collection, and I'm sure that goes in most big cities. I bet have the same thing happening. So, how did zine people get so respectable? Any ideas?
I
Barbara,
think
they
it's
won't even
I
let you
think
in
it's
the
just,
festival.
taking the means of production into your own hands. Like when it's almost like any art. Like if you don't see what you want represented artistically, visually, or in whatever medium that you're intrigued by, then you make it yourself. It's art, music. It's if you don't see what you want, you have to make it.
Yeah.
And it's um and I think just the fact that there became all of this, it just became very, very normal with the whole mail art kind of movement, if you will, of the mostly of the 80s, really. But I guess there was mail art, of course, in the 60s and 70s. But it just became so huge in the 80s with tape trading as well, that I think it just sort of became normalized as a legitimate medium on its own, right?
Yeah, and it also has to do with these two movements of queercore and riot grrrl, and the crossover between the two, and that academics are looking at those movements, and I mean, that was one of the reasons talking to Hal, that I wanted to have this panel included in TCAF, because I figured today's generation owes a debt to those movements and to the original zine makers. And you would have thought that with the rise of digital era, that they would have just disappeared, but zines are even more here to stay, because
Yeah.
of the ability to not need bricks and mortar to sell them, or to connect with your audience or your peers. You can do it online and at all these different events, right? Like TCAF, and here in Toronto, Zine Dream and Can Zine. And every city has multiple events like that. OCAD has its own Artist Alley and zine events.
But I mean, there are also a huge segment of zine culture is devoted to music. You know, there are so many punk zines and metal zines. I mean, I have a huge archive of music zines, and a lot, especially with the punk ones, there's a lot of art that's attendant there. Like a lot of skate culture art is in a lot of the punk zines, and like just really crazy photography in the metal zines, like really, really crazy low tech, high contrast photography in the metal zines. And so it's not just about social movements like queercore and riot grrrl and sort of art scenes. There's a huge portion of zine culture is specifically to do with music, like interviews with underground bands and reviews of tapes and demos and so forth. And a lot of zines came with tape included, or the tape came with a zine included, right? Um, and then, of course, there was, at least in the 80s, there's a huge portion of zines that were very political, like animal rights and anarchist and vegan zines, right? So socialist zines. So there are all these sort of subcultures. It's not just about the sort of artistic poetry, film, avant-garde art kinds of things. It's also about these underground socio-political movements and underground music that have huge troves of diversity within those subgenres of zines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And cartoonists, of course, that's their
Of course.
entry point of promoting themselves, and not just promoting, but also like the zine itself is a means to an end, right? It's
Yeah.
collectible object.
Mm-hmm.
Gary, you feel respectable?
Well, all underground kind of things seem to go overground eventually. So it's DIY, which has that punk ethic, and I don't know if I want to be respectable per se. I would rather be viewed as an outsider or whatever, but I guess that's something that other people decide. If you try to be an outsider, it's the same way as coolness. If you try to be cool, you're automatically disqualified. So you can't be an outsider. So I don't know if I even care about being respectable.
Yeah. So thinking about the zines you did, and you didn't just do zines, because I remember you did a lot of flyers, you did a lot of stickers too, with
Well,
very strong visual images, and now you do tattoos with
Tattoos.
really strong
oh
visual.
yeah, right. Yeah, I've tattooed both um, Fiona, Sheila, GB, Beverly from Fifth Column, Bruce LaBruce. Man, he let me do a Jodie Foster tattoo on him.
Oh, you did that one.
Yeah, it's probably
Probably one
not in
of
very
his
good
most
shape this
famous
many years
tattoos.
later.
He's got a lot of tattoos, and probably it's one of his most famous ones.
Yeah.
The ones he's more, or maybe the one he's most proud of, seems to be.
Mhm. But yeah, I tried to promote a little. I was fooling around with tattooing, but I was not doing it the correct way out of a legitimate shop. So, but I did a little bit of tattooing, but I was also doing music. And so some of my first zine projects were meat market icons for a group that I was doing with my wife, Susie, called Wiggle Pig. And that had a zine and a cassette. And um, yeah, we're doing cassette networking and the zine scene all coalesced and propagated itself throughout the postal service. Those are really great times. From my perspective, I don't see a lot of zine stuff happening anymore in the Detroit area, but I've kind of dropped out of the, I don't know, the local scene or whatever to just do my own thing. So maybe I'm not aware of it, but where was I going with that? Hasn't it mostly? It seems to me like it's turned into blogs, and now it's more vlogging video.
I
And
was going to bring that up as well. I
Yeah.
was going to say that it's like e-zines are more like blogs and vlogs now. They're just because pardon me, people just don't have as much physical space, so it's really hard to kind of amass these huge collections of things. Although vinyl takes up a lot of room, and everybody's collecting vinyl again. So,
Or you could do it on a Tumblr page or one of those other things. Much easier.
yeah, create a mood board on Pinterest.
Yeah. Less
but there's
postal.
nothing like physical media for sure.
I agree.
Yeah. So you used to do it, I mean, primarily you were doing cut and paste. I think you also used computer layouts, generated layouts too. Is that right?
Who are you talking to?
Gary.
Oh, well, I had some computer access at Kinko's. They started bringing digital in after a while, but most of the things.
To cut with the X-Acto knife to get stuff. It was like a lot of work.
This is an example of if you've worked in the printing trade. This is amberlith technically, but I would cut a lot of this stuff out for some of these graphics, like the lettering and the chains on this vagina dentata cover were all cut with ruby lith. And what else was ruby lith? One of the great things about working at Kinko's is I could do 11 by 17 centerfolds. So this is mostly the vital parts were cut out with ruby lith, and then pen and ink. And I've got other examples. I don't want to take up monopolize on the time, but yeah, a lot of it was done just pen, and it was all. I wasn't buying art supplies. I was using the supplies that Kinko's had there. Kinko's was a one-stop shop for making a zine. You could buy the glue sticks, pens, make your photocopies. You could use their computers to do, text and writing. Yet once they brought in the little Mac Classics, you could do scanning and everything else. And obviously, they've turned into FedEx Kinko's, and it's a thing of the past. But Kinko's used to be. They seem to go out of their way to hire people who are interesting. They were creative types and everything, and gradually became more and more corporate, and ended up getting ousted out by a younger guy who I trained to take my job. And ended up coming back to the Detroit area after I couldn't find reasonable employment in the printing trade anymore. But that was good because I was able to start at the family business doing tattooing and piercing.
Right. So Fiona, I think, being at OCAD, like OCAD, like you are, and a professor, you probably come in contact with a lot of younger people, probably more than any of us that are doing zines. Do you have any feelings about it?
Well, I teach a comics class, and by the end of the course, the students make a zine.
Yeah.
And we've been lucky enough to have a table at TCAF in the last bunch of years, which is student run. I'm not really involved with the organizing of the table. The students run it themselves, but then they sell their zines at TCAF. So it's a great opportunity. So yeah, I see lots of zines, and just recently the illustration program and graphic design program joined together to open a risograph studio on the 6th floor at 100 McCall, run by amazing cartoonist Jem Woodall. So students can, so if you don't know what risograph or risograph, it depends on who you talk to, how they pronounce it, but it's a way of making cheap color copies. So it looks like a photocopying machine, but each color has to run through and then dry, like screen printing. So yeah, so I mean, having that studio and access to the students is, so there's a kind of a mini explosion of creativity and making zines, making prints, making multiples, right? And self-publishing. So yeah, and there's also the publishing and printing program at OCAD that has a lot of zines coming out of, and small imprints like Old Growth Press, who I believe aren't active right now, but are morphing into other things. Yeah, there's a lot of zine love and excitement.
And
At least
do you show them the old stuff you did and stuff you contributed to?
Not, maybe not the really ancient stuff. I did edit 5 issues of a zine called Wilding, and I had some of my ex-students and recent grads and local cartoonists contribute to it, or the Wilding. And one of the second issue was published with the support of Annie Koyama and Koyama Press. But then I kind of left it behind to move on to my own personal work and stuff. Because yeah, corralling. I know you guys, all of you, worked with artists, and corralling people to create these zines can be very laborious, even though it's very gratifying in the end to have that object. And no, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, so that's not so many, that's probably 10 years ago that I did that. But did I answer the question?
I wonder if most of them keep up with it after school, after they finish school.
Some of them do. I see them at CanZine and TCAF and Zine Dream. Yeah, it continues to be part of their in quotes art practice, in getting their work out there. Yeah, and we should mention, we're talking about places where you could buy zines. Art Metropole, right?
Oh, of course.
And of course in New York there was See Here, which is amazing, super impactful store. But Printed Matter.
Printed Matter, yeah, and they're still around.
Yeah. So not just zines, but artist multiples in general. And
yeah.
Probably
Suspect Video had zines too.
Yes, Suspect Video, hugely influential.
Glenn, I'm sorry Glenn didn't make it, because Glenn worked at Suspect. He probably sold a lot of zines. Besides himself producing a lot of zines, I think he produced like 26 plus titles.
Really?
1,000 copies of everything. Plus he sold a lot of stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry he couldn't make it today. It would have been good.
Could I mention a couple of other like kind of later, there was a cut and paste zine fest
Stacey?
that Stacey Case organized
Yeah.
in Toronto. And there was a store run in Kensington Market by
Who's Emma?
well, Who's Emma? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Lots of zines. But I was thinking of Michael Como and Tara Azzopardi had a store.
Oh yeah.
Um,
On Augusta.
yeah, Penny Arcade.
Yeah.
And even in later times and more recent times, Johnny Peterson's Weird Things on Bathurst, north of
Right.
Bloor, which has morphed into Jeanette LaPalme's Tutoon Gallery, which is chock full of zines.
We should go visit them. Where's it? Where are they located?
They're located on Bathurst, north of Bloor, but closer to
Closer to DuPont on the west side.
There's some homework for us to do.
What's that?
There's some homework. Field trip.
Yeah, and on just one more thing, on the comics tip, Mark Connery's Rudy comic.
Yeah.
Big, impactful.
And of course, Scott Treleaven's Salvation Army, which harkens back to the queercore impact, the impactful queercore zines. It was actually originally called the Salvation Army as kind of a play on words, but the Salvation Army actually issued him a cease and desist. So he changed it to the Salivation Army. But that was not just queercore, but also the occult and the arcane, a lot of really witchy poo and dark arts, but queer based. Very, very radical zine.
I hope he found a way to publish that cease and desist letter.
Oh yeah, he published it in Salvation Army.
Yeah. Because you know,
Dollar bill,
them
box.
Yeah, bin box. I think my favorite Canadian zine was Kill Baby. You know, 5 very thick issues. They were thick. Did you ever do those, Gary?
No, I liked them though. Those were cool.
Super thick. And, you know, for myself, I never really talked about my favorite. Psychotronic Encyclopedia, when it came out in the mid 80s, really inspired me. I went and visited the author, Michael Weldon, who gave me some Psychotronic copies, and it really inspired me. That's why the beginning of Trash Compactor was about movies. It was kind of just like an imitation Psychotronic until it kind of eventually grew into something more. So, like, in the end, what was it all about for each of you?
For me, I think it was a sense of freedom and community, and a way to, in an artistic way, actually demonstrate the collectivity that my very optimistic and you know, almost innocent brain, you know, envisioned about, like a collectivity and equality and freedom. But you know, obviously with adulthood comes cynicism. But it was really a way of us to it was a way for us to be transgressive in a way, because I guess we were all very young, and so there's a lot of really kind of transgressive sexuality in our zines. And it was also a way of playing with a very limited economic, like a very, very limited budget, and creating something very maximalist, which is my aesthetic. I really love maximalism. So we would rephotocopy and rephotocopy and rephotocopy and rephotocopy, so things would get bigger and bigger and more distorted, and like really, really high contrast things like this or this. And we would use all these different typewriters, and then I would do things like cut each word out, and then put these like I filled in like odd spaces. It was just a way of using text in a graphic manner as well. Just the kind of actual visual appeal of text itself. It was a very unique way of exploring a surrealist aesthetic with very, very limited means. And we actually built a lot of bridges. Like we met all the JD's people through our zine, and I think we met Fiona through our zine. And so we made a lot of artistic connections, and we networked a lot through it. It was really an amazing community building artistic enterprise, and I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, you should be. Gary, what was it all about for you?
Well, it's kind of a compulsion, really, but I mean, it's the charm of DIY, the networking aspect, transgressive art, for example. Like I'm thinking about when I worked at this place, and probably towards the end, some of the things that I put on the copier glass are what got me fired from the place. There were bloody tattoo bandages that I had on the glass, like this. And even at one point, I had my vasectomy bandages, bloody vasectomy bandages on the glass of one of the copiers. And
That
one of
might,
the
yeah, that might get you fired.
yeah, one of the managers found. I did clean the glass afterwards, but yeah, it was just a compulsion, man. It was just to try to get your stuff out there.
Right. You know, it's funny. I was just recently reading a book about this guy, Harry Smith, who collected a lot of stuff, and he also collected tattoo band-aids.
Oh, no way.
Band-Aids.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he collected a lot of stuff, and that was something else he collected.
Filmmaker, music archivist.
Yeah, all that stuff, but he collected that too. He collected paper airplanes too that he found in the street.
Oh, wow.
Fiona, what was it all about for you?
Useful bravado and getting the work out there in a way that, you know, me personally, vocally couldn't do. It's like getting my artwork out there in people's hands, and yeah, I like hearing like that word transgressive. That seems to link all four of us in the image making and the zines that we created. Yeah, it's not really over for me, because of seeing my students work and going out to the shows and seeing the new work that's coming out. And I wanted to give a shout out to GB Jones, because she's kind of at the meeting point of Riot Girl and queercore, even though these definitions are very limiting, considering all that happened before and after them, and they continue. But GB is part of this big show at the Museum of Contemporary Art here in Toronto. It's called Greater Toronto Art 2024. I think it might be opening, or it just opened, or it's about to open. And I know once this recording airs, it may still be on, but you can check that.
I will definitely do that. I didn't know about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Fiona, you contributed to so many zines. You ever turn anybody down?
Did I?
Yeah.
Probably. I can't really recall now, but and now I'm at an age where I can afford to turn work away. And when I say work, right, like the zine days, everything was free.
Everything was free. Yeah, you weren't getting paid, so do it.
But yeah, I can't recall.
Okay. Well, bring up the financial part, and I guess this is my final question. Do you ever break even doing this? Anybody break even doing this?
I don't think we spent anything. We didn't spend anything. We just used school resources.
The TDSB supported you?
Yep. Our tax dollars hard at work.
Okay, that's a good work for them. Gary, you did a lot of stuff. Do you ever break even?
Well, I had an employee discount that helped, but I probably did not break even considering all the copies that were mailed out and stuff. But I probably did better than some zine people because I had that job at Kinko's.
Right.
And you helped all of us out.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, yeah, as far as breaking even, Yeah, breaking even financially, balanced out with networking opportunities and so forth, for sure. So I broke even in other ways.
In other ways, yeah, there's other ways to break even. That's for sure. Fiona, break even in this whole thing.
Yeah, for the ones that I sold, I definitely would break even because at the time it was so cheap to do it, or it was free. So, you know, sometimes I was just making money on top of free stuff.
Okay. Well, I think that's it for me. And does anybody else have anything they want to bring up? Comment, question for anybody? Free for all?
Well, I want to say, oh, go ahead.
Let's scold Glenn for not showing up. I'm
I
mad.
wish he did. He had a lot of good stories. He's a good talker. I think we would have went a little
Yeah.
while if we would have had Glenn. You could tell his stories about when he met Harvey Keitel and showed him the Harvey Keitel zine he did, and Keitel was utterly perplexed by the whole thing. But yeah, well, thank you. If nobody's got anything else.
I was going to say, you know, send my gratitude to all of you for being here, and you know, I'm sorry that Louis wasn't here too, because Louis had some experience with curating zines and writing about them too, right? I think.
Yes. And Louis was one of the three key people. Like there was myself, Louis Jacob, and Elaine Yao, who were the three main. We were the nexus of Salmon Hut, and then there were all these other people who contributed, but were given equal credit. But yeah, Louis was one of what was part of the heartbeat of our zine. So it would have been nice if he was able to be here. He did text me and said he forgot about it, and because he was expecting some art related phone call, like from a gallery or something. So
fair enough. I mean, we should say Louis Jacob is like a world
international international art star.
Yes.
Like he's exhibited at the Venice Biennale, for example. Like that's crazy.
No, it's too bad he didn't participate. But there could be another one because there were so many people in Toronto that did zines. You could easily do this again.
Yeah, it's a definite epicenter, and I feel like I like all three of you have been significant points in my life. Yeah, it's a weird kind of, this is your life. Not weird, it's very positive, but
well, I've got so much of your art in my home. I think about you literally all day, every day. So thank you, Fiona.
And yeah, well, thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Gary, and thank you very much, Hal. And you know, Hal's trash compactor was like, you know,
was fabulous.
Barometer hip tastemaker. We didn't even talk about the Bloor Cinema, and
oh my gosh,
how
many people work there?
Well, Hal, I think Hal, you were the first one to work there, and then brought us all in there, and then everybody would go hang out there too.
Yeah, on the roof.
Sheila worked there. Ian Danzig didn't work there. Who went on to found Exclaim, but he was around there. Seth didn't work there, but he was around there, involved with people. I'm sure there's Maurice. It features in his memoir.
Yeah.
Going to the Bloor Cinema. No, I think that was a significant, especially at that period of the 80s. It was pretty significant. Sheila was there when I was there mostly. Yeah.
You could hang out on the roof, like climb out through the washroom window and hang out on the roof above the marquee.
That's what you had to do if you wanted to go change the sign every day. Rain or shine, you had to go.
I don't even remember who we used to hang out with who worked there, but we would always just like hang out on the roof.
Yeah, no, yeah. Significant place too, that's for sure.
Yeah, and today it's the Hot Dogs Cinema.
Yeah.
A little less fun, but still good.
So I guess we're going to wrap up, and I want to say thank you to all of you on behalf of TCAF, and you know, hello to our viewers. Thanks for tuning in when this airs, and thank you to Jalen Innes, our
thank you very much.